Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today in this professional development regarding mandated reporting. I know some of you know me from school here, but if there's anyone that's joining that doesn't, my name is Rhonda Weigelt, and I am a second year student in the school counseling program at the University of Mary. I will have a brief session today, but if you have questions after today's training, I will provide my contact information for you. Feel free to reach out at any time. I know questions don't always arise during training, but after we've had time to think about them, we might have a question that wasn't answered. So please feel free to reach out at any time. Okay, let's start by reviewing the objectives for today. We will be defining mandated reporting and its significance. We will be working on understanding North Dakota's laws and requirements for mandatory reporting. We will learn the best practices for recognizing, responding to, and reporting child abuse or neglect. And we are also going to discuss how we can increase our confidence in fulfilling the legal and ethical responsibilities. Okay, let's start with defining mandated reporting. Mandated reporting refers to the legal obligation of certain professionals, including school staff, to report any reasonable suspicions of child abuse or neglect. This duty aims to ensure the safety and well-being of children by involving Child Protective Services or law enforcement when concerns arise. Now, why is this important, or why does it matter? Mandated reporting is a legal requirement. School professionals are legally obligated to report suspicions of child abuse or neglect under state and federal laws. Failure to fulfill this duty can result in penalties, including fines or loss of your licensure. This ensures accountability and compliance with child protection laws. It also matters for early intervention. Reporting suspected abuse allows authorities to intervene promptly, preventing further harm. Early identification of at-risk children ensures they receive the necessary protection and support, and potentially saving lives and promoting recovery. Another reason it matters is for child safety as a priority. Mandated reporting highlights the critical importance of prioritizing children's well-being. By addressing concerns promptly, educators play a vital role of fostering safer environments and connecting families with resources to reduce risks. And lastly, potential consequences for not reporting. Ignoring signs of abuse can allow harm to continue and place children at even greater risk. For mandated reporters, failing to act can result in legal consequences and, more significantly, the loss of trust from both the children and the community. On this slide, I will review the types of abuse and the legal frameworks in North Dakota. Mandated reporters are required to report about various forms of child abuse. The first abuse type that we're going to talk about is physical. Physical abuse is any non-accidental injury that is inflicted upon a child, such as bruises, burns, or fractures, and often results from actions like hitting or shaking. Sexual abuse involves any sexual activity with the child, including inappropriate touching, exploitation, or exposure to pornography. Emotional abuse is any behavior that harms a child's self-worth or emotional well-being, such as verbal insults, intimidation, or constant criticism. And the last type of abuse we have is neglect. This is the failure to meet a child's basic needs, including food, shelter, medical care, education, or supervision. In North Dakota, reports must be made immediately or as soon as possible upon forming a reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect. The urgency is critical to prevent further harm and to ensure timely intervention. Professionals who fail to fulfill their mandated reporting duties may face significant legal and professional consequences. In North Dakota, this includes potential criminal charges, fines, or disciplinary actions such as loss of licensure. Understanding these signs of abuse and neglect is critical for identifying when a child might need help and fulfilling our roles as mandated reporters. So we're going to look at the four main types of abuse: physical neglect, sexual and emotional abuse, and we're going to talk about ways that we can recognize them. So, first, let's talk about physical abuse. Signs include unexplained bruises, burns, or injuries. For instance, you might notice bruises in an unusual place like the back, thighs, or upper arms, which are not typically from regular play. Injuries that don't match the explanation provided or seem to occur frequently can also be a red flag. As mandated reporters, we must trust our instincts and report when we see patterns that raise concern. The next type is neglect. Neglect can sometimes be less obvious but equally as damaging. Key signs include poor hygiene, such as dirty clothing or a child who consistently appears unbathed, malnutrition, like excessive hunger or noticeable weight loss, lack of medical care, where a child may have an untreated injury or an illness despite the clear need for it. Neglect often comes or stems from a caregiver's inability or their refusal to meet a child's basic needs. The next abuse is sexual abuse, and this can manifest in ways that require sensitivity to interpret. Knowledge of sexual behaviors inappropriate for the age. For example, a young child displaying an understanding of sexual concepts that seems unusual. And then there can be also physical signs like symptoms of STDs or complaints of pain in their private areas. We must approach this with care and report any suspicion immediately to ensure the child's safety. And then we have emotional abuse. Emotional abuse can have profound effects on a child's well being. Signs include extreme behavior, such as excessive aggression or extreme withdrawal, low self esteem or frequent expressions of worthlessness, and a child who seems overly fearful, especially of specific adults or settings, could be experiencing emotional harm. Recognizing these signs often requires paying attention to a child's behavior over time. So, if you notice any of these signs, we need to remember that it's not our job to investigate, but to report concerns to the proper authorities. Now that we've discussed how to recognize signs of abuse, let's go over the reporting process. As mandated reporters, it's essential to understand the steps to ensure timely and accurate reporting, which can protect children from further harm. Step one is to identify. The first step is to observe and document concerns. Pay attention to any physical signs, behaviors, or disclosures that raise suspicion of abuse or neglect. Write down factual observations, what you see, hear, or noticed, not assumptions or interpretations. For example, instead of saying the child is being abused, document the child has bruises on their arms and stated, "My dad hit me." Step two is to report. Once you've identified concerns, the next step is to make the report. You can contact North Dakota Child Protective Services or your local law enforcement agency immediately or as soon as possible. When reporting, provide factual information: the child's name, address, what you observed, and the statements the child made. Avoid speculating or diagnosing. Your role is to relay the facts, not the conclusions. For North Dakota CPS, reports can be made through their hotline or online submission system, which will ensure quick action. And step three is follow up. After reporting, you may be asked to cooperate with authorities as needed. So this might involve providing additional details, clarifying observations, or attending a meeting. Your involvement helps build a clearer picture for investigators to act in the child's best interest. And lastly is confidentiality. It's important to remember that reports are confidential under North Dakota law. Your identity as a reporter is protected to ensure your safety and encourage honesty in reporting. Only those directly involved in the case, such as CPS workers or law enforcement, will have access to the information you provide. Reporting suspected abuse or neglect is a critical responsibility. So we need to remember: identify, report, follow up, and maintain confidentiality. By following these steps, you can ensure that children in need receive the protection and the support that they deserve. Now let's focus on best practices to ensure that we handle suspicions of abuse appropriately. As mandated reporters, it's critical to maintain professionalism and neutrality throughout the entire process, from identifying concerns to making a report. When dealing with a suspected abuse case, always maintain professionalism and neutrality. This is essential to avoid influencing the child's account or actions in any way. Stay calm and objective, regardless of how disturbing the situation may be. Your role is not to investigate, but to report what you observed and heard. Always be respectful and compassionate toward the child, as they may be going through an incredibly difficult and emotional time. And remember, any assumptions or emotional responses could potentially harm the child's case in the long term. Next, accurately and timely documentation is critical. Write down your observations as soon as possible. Document exactly what you see, like bruises or injuries, and what the child says, not what you believe is happening. Stick to the facts. Avoid making assumptions or trying to interpret the child's behavior. For example, if a child says, "My mom hits me," write exactly that without embellishments. Timely documentation helps ensure that your report is as accurate and helpful as possible for authorities. When speaking with a child, avoid leading or interrogating questions. Do not ask questions that might suggest what the child should say, such as, "Did your mom hurt you?" Or "Did they hit you with a belt?" Instead, let the child share information in their own words. Ask open-ended questions like, "Can you tell me what happened?" Remember, you are not there to investigate, but to document what the child is willing to share in a non-threatening way. The investigation is the responsibility of the professionals who handle the child abuse cases. While it is important to collaborate with school administration, do not let this delay your responsibility to report. You may need to inform your principal or counselor, but always report directly to CPS or law enforcement first. School administration can provide guidance, but your duty to report is immediate and cannot wait. It's crucial that you do not delay taking action, even if you are in the middle of school procedures or other discussions. As we continue to discuss mandated reporting, it's important to acknowledge some common barriers that might make it difficult for professionals to report suspected abuse. Let's explore how to overcome some of these challenges. One major concern is the fear of making a false report. It's important to remember that under North Dakota law, professionals are protected when they make reports in good faith. This means that as long as you're acting based on reasonable suspicion and not personal bias or malice, you won't face legal consequences for making a report. It's far better to report and be wrong than to remain silent when a child's safety is at risk. Another barrier is uncertainty about whether abuse is occurring. Keep in mind that you don't need to have proof, just a reasonable suspicion. Your role as a mandated reporter is not to investigate, but to raise concerns so that trained professionals can determine what's going on. If you're unsure, it's always better to report and let authorities take it from there. And finally, there may be concerns about damaging relationships with families. However, remember that the safety of the child must always be the priority. Reporting suspected abuse is about protecting the child and ensuring they get the help they need. If families truly care for the child, they will understand that the action was taken out of concern for their well-being. It's important to consider the ethical challenges that come with this responsibility. Balancing legal obligations, professional ethics, and well-being of the child can be hard. Let's explore a few key ethical considerations. Mandated reporters have a legal obligation to report suspected abuse, but they also have professional ethics to consider, such as maintaining confidentiality and treating others with respect. The challenge is to balance these responsibilities. You may find yourself in a situation where your legal duty to report comes into conflict with your desire to protect a student's privacy or your relationship with a family. However, the safety of the child should always come first. Ethical guidelines in school settings support the idea that child welfare should be prioritized over other concerns. Another key ethical issue is avoiding bias when recognizing and reporting abuse. It's essential to remain objective and not let personal feelings, stereotypes, or prior experiences influence your judgment. All children, regardless of background, deserve the same level of care and protection. When observing signs of abuse, ensure that your actions are based on factual information and reasonable suspicion, not on assumptions or prejudices. As mandated reporters, we are also ethically responsible for providing emotional support to children. However, it's important not to overstep your role. While it's natural to want to comfort the child, we must avoid becoming involved in the investigation or leading the child's narrative. Our role is to listen without judgment, show empathy, and report our observations. The child's well being depends on our ability to provide the right support while also ensuring that the proper authorities are involved to investigate further. Before we finish up, I want to make sure that you're aware of some resources that can help you navigate the reporting process and stay informed on your responsibilities as mandated reporters. The first resource is the North Dakota Child Abuse Hotline. If you ever suspect child abuse or neglect, you can call the North Dakota Child Abuse Hotline. This hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for confidential reports, and your call can help ensure the child's safety as soon as possible. Local law enforcement. So remember, if you believe a child is in immediate danger or a crime is occurring, you should contact the law enforcement directly. They work closely with Child Protective Services to investigate and respond swiftly. For those of you looking for additional training or clarification, there are many resources available. North Dakota's mandated reporting guides provide comprehensive information on the state laws and reporting requirements. Additionally, you can access online workshops and training resources through local educational agencies or organizations like the North Dakota Child Advocacy Centers. These resources are here to support you in your vital role as a mandated reporter. Utilizing them ensures that children are protected and you're fulfilling your legal and ethical obligations. If you need further information or have any questions, feel free to reach out. Let's review the key takeaways from today's presentation. Mandated reporting is a legal responsibility. As professionals, we have a duty to report suspected abuse or neglect, and North Dakota law provides protections for those who report in good faith. Recognizing the signs of abuse is critical. Be aware of physical, sexual, emotional abuse, and neglect. Each type of abuse has specific signs, such as unexplained injuries, malnutrition, inappropriate sexual knowledge, or extreme behavior. Reporting involves observing, documenting, and contacting authorities. If you suspect abuse, report it immediately, providing factual, objective information. Collaboration with school administration may be necessary, but reporting should never be delayed. Professional ethics matter. Maintain professionalism and neutrality. Document observations accurately and support the child emotionally without overstepping your role. Always avoid biases and judgment when reporting. Resources and support are available. Utilize state-specific guides, online training, and workshops to stay informed and confident in your role. Always reach out to local law enforcement and CPS when needed. Thank you guys for joining me and listening to me today. I've included my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me for any questions that you may have.